So hello everyone, welcome to another video from Pynet Labs. And in this video, we are actually going to discover or explore like what are the difference between layer 2 and layer 3 switches. So as a network engineer, we might have came across quite a lot of devices, and some of those devices are basically switch. But many of us may not know like the switches are of two types. So depending upon the layer they might be working on, there are two types of switches. The first switch is something that is known as layer 2 switch, and the other one is something that is known as layer 3 switch. So they may sound similar, but in reality they might look similar also. So when you have a look on a layer 2 switch and layer 3 switch, you might say like these switches are identical, but when you go into the working of these switches, they might differ. They might differ in their working. So if we proceed, let's start with our switch number one.
If you enjoyed the content of the video, don't forget to like and share the video and subscribe to our channel.
So a layer 2 switch or L2 switch, it works on the data link layer of the OSI model. Now, those who of you don't know what a OSI model is, so OSI model is kind of like a conceptual model which essentially breaks down the whole networking process into 7 layers, okay, or 7 step. And because of OSI model, the others vendor or the technology developers, they got a reference model and they use this reference model whenever they are about to create some sort of technology or devices. So when we are talking about networking, we always use this OSI model to understand like how a packet travels or what is the process that might happen when we are like sending or receiving any sort of data. So when we are talking about network here, or specifically when you're talking about switches, so the L2 switch operates on the data link layer of the OSI model. That is why they are known as L2 layer 2 switch. Okay. Now, when it comes to the functions of layer 2 switches, so layer 2 switch is generally responsible for three things. So first of all, it learns the MAC address of all the connected devices. So it doesn't matter how many number of devices you might have in your switch or in your layer 2 network or in your local area network. The switch that might be connecting all those devices, first of all, learns all the MAC addresses of that switch of all the devices, and it also creates a kind of like a database in which it stores the interface and the MAC address that is associated with that particular interface. Once the MAC, it has learned the MAC address, so it saves those MAC address in a database that is known as MAC address table. And in future, whenever multiple devices are exchanging information, so the switch always refers to this MAC address to determine like where the packet is coming from and where it needs to be transferred. So if we move to the next slide, you might see like this is what a switch might looks like. So when let's suppose you have like 4 or something devices connected onto your switch with the respective MAC address. So the moment you start communicating across the network, so the switch kind of like creates a table here. So on the left side of the table, it consists of all the interfaces, and on the right side, it generally consists of the MAC addresses. Okay. Now layer 2 switch is generally optimal for smaller network, like suppose you might be working in a single VLAN, or let's say you only have a single VLAN, you might be connecting 4, 5, 10, 20 devices together. Now in those kind of networks, the layer 2 switch is very ideal. So you can work flawlessly with the layer 2 switch, but as the number of devices or number of VLANs keeps on increasing, you might find it troubling in order to go along with the layer 2 switch. So layer 2 switch are cheaper. So compared to L3 switch and other devices, they are way more cheaper than them. So it's like when you're creating a local area network and you're using layer 2 switch, it's easier and more cheaper to configure. Okay. Another thing about layer 2 switch is that if you only want to communicate within a single VLAN or within a single broadcast domain, then it won't be an issue. But the moment you try to add multiple VLANs and you think of communicating across those VLANs, then that could be a challenge because layer 2 switch doesn't have any built-in solution or built-in option for inter-VLAN routing. If you wish to do inter-VLAN routing, then you either have to add a layer 3 switch, you either have to purchase a layer 3 switch or you have to add a router with your switch in order to make sure that the data here might coming from the one VLAN is able to reach the other VLAN. Now, just in order to understand this thing better, let me take you to the packet tracer environment. So here, this is my packet tracer environment. And if you pay attention here, I actually have layered, or actually I have a network architecture ready here. So you can see I have a layer 2 switch with here some PCs are connected, nearly around 4 PCs, and all these PCs, they are belonging to a single VLAN. Now, if I go to the switch, okay, so before I jump onto the switch here, show you the MAC address table, let me show you like all devices are kind of like able to communicate with each other. So if I try to ping the devices, you can see like my packets are being delivered without any issue because they all belongs to the same VLAN. And now if I go back to my switch here, if I go to my switch, okay, go to the CLI, okay, move to the privilege mode. So in order to get to the privilege mode, all you have to do is type the command like enable. And here, if you type the command like show MAC address table, by typing this command, MAC address table, and the moment you hit enter, this is the table that you might see. So here we can see the VLAN, like this all saying like all the addresses, all the devices are currently connected or a member of VLAN 1. Then we have the information of the MAC addresses, whatever the MAC address here, and the associated port, like particular MAC address is attached to which interface. So this is how a layer 2 switch works. Okay, so it's pretty simple, no brainer here. Now, if I go back to the slide, the next switch that we might see is something like layer 3 switch. Okay, so here we have all our layer 3 switch. So this specific thing or the unique thing about layer 3 switch is that it is capable to work in layer 2 as well as layer 3, that is data link layer or the network layer of the OSI model. Okay, so like we discussed in the previous slide about the OSI model, so we can see here like the layer 3 switch is capable of working on both the layers. That means it can do routing, it can work as a router as well, and it can also work as a switch as well. Now, unlike layer 2 switch, layer 3 switch is also capable of learning the MAC addresses. So it also creates a MAC address table. And besides this, it is also able to perform routing. Now, layer 3 switch is ideal for big enterprise network where you might require to connect multiple VLANs together. So suppose you work on an environment where you might have like different departments and your objective is to make sure that one department might be able to communicate with other departments. So in that case, you actually have to create inter-VLAN routing. Now, when we are working with layer 3 switch, since layer 3 switch is capable of performing routing as well, so you don't require an additional router just in case to connect two or multiple VLANs together. So what I'm trying to say here, like you can easily manage the inter-VLAN routing. And the only downside here of using a layer 3 switch is that it might prove to be a little bit costlier than layer 2 switch. Okay, but if you have a big enterprise network where you might be working with quite a lot of VLANs, so it is suggested that you go for the layer 3 switch. And in case if you have a smaller network where you won't be having multiple VLANs, you're just working with a one VLAN and your objective is to get the local area devices or the clients connected to each other, then you can go for the layer 2 switch. So just like we saw the working here on the layer 2 switch, if I go back to my packet tracer, I also have a layer 3 environment set up. So if I close this setup and if I scroll down, like this is the environment that I have. So here you can see, you can see like I have a layer 3 switch, and this layer 3 switch has two VLANs. On the left side, we have VLAN 10, on the right side, we have VLAN 11. And if you check on here, if I try to ping across the devices, I might be able to communicate. So from VLAN 10, I can actually communicate to VLAN 11. So both the PCs from VLAN 10 are able to communicate both the devices of the VLAN 11. Now, if I go to switch number 3, so here I am on my switch number 3. Let me go to the privilege mode. And if I run the command like show MAC address table, so this is the MAC address. So similar to what we have seen on our L2 switch here, we can also see the MAC address table. So here you can see like these are the two VLANs that I have created. So the first two members of my network here, they belongs to VLAN 10, and this is the respective MAC address of my devices and the associated physical interface. And similarly, the bottom two MAC addresses are of the devices that are like member of VLAN 11 and the respective interfaces. So this is how you can easily identify or work with a layer 3 switch. So as a network engineer, it is like very important that you understand where to use a layer 2 switch and a layer 3 switch. Now to summarize all this thing, so let's say if you're talking about layer 2 switch, so layer 2 switch works in the OSI model layer 2. And when we are talking about layer 3 switch, so the layer 3 switch works on the OSI model layer 3 and layer 2. So it can work as a router as well as a switch. So if you're like working with a small network, then you don't need to have a layer 3 switch. You can work around with a layer 2 switch. But if you are working with a huge enterprise network where you might be having like multiple VLANs, so it is best to have a layer 3 switch, because with the layer 3 switch, you might be able to do inter-VLAN routing. So that's all for today, guys. And in case if you have any doubts, any queries, do let us know in the comments. And if you like this video, please give us like. Thank you, guys. Keep learning. See you in the next session.